Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to Muslim Network TV's This Hijabi Life, a show about Muslim women, modest fashion, and the modern world. I'm your host, Hakeemah, and today we're going to be taking a little bit of a break from fashion and really just talking about the journey of hijab. So many different women come to hijab through different paths in life, and I think it's really important to take the time to notice that hijab is not easy. It's not easy to be a visibly Muslim woman in the world today. There's so many different factors that go into how you wear hijab, when you wear hijab, and just that journey through your life. So today we're going to be having three regular women, powerful women with impactful stories, but they're not designers, they're not public figures, and their stories are really, really important. And I think this is going to be a really eye-opening show so that you can see that wearing hijab is multidimensional. So today we're going to have three guests, May, Jameela, and Nadia, and we'll start with May. May is from Raleigh, North Carolina, and she is Egyptian. She is a proud parent of two wonderful children, a son and a daughter. Her passion is educating her children through travel. In addition to her role as a dedicated wife and mother, she also contributes to the community as an administrative assistant at an Islamic school. She tries to show her students that hijab is beautiful by wearing it with style and confidence. So welcome, May.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. And next we have Jameela. Jameela is a Puerto Rican Bengali Muslim born and raised in NYC. She is a homeschooling mom of three children and loves to travel. She was raised in a very strict Muslim household where her hijab journey began at the age of only 5 years old. Her story is one of empowerment, the importance of choice, and taking charge of one's own hijab narrative. So welcome, Jameela. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for being here. And next we have Nadia. Nadia was born and raised in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. Although she was born and raised as a Muslim, she is currently on a journey of intentionally relearning Islam as an adult to be more deeply understanding of its practices and the Arabic language. Nadia is an attorney in New York City, and outside of work, she enjoys spending time with family, friends, traveling, and taking classes to learn something new. So welcome, Nadia. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Alaikum salam.
So I just want to start by saying that we all know each other from taking a course. So we were all in a hijab styling class, one that I offered last year. And I think it's really important to start there because we all were a part of that experience together as sisters in a very special, intimate environment where we were sharing our love for hijab, our love for styling hijab and fabrics and things like that. But also we got into the layers and the deeper meanings of what it is to be a visibly Muslim woman. And when that happens, the stories come out. And that's what we all kind of share as our hijab journey. Everyone has a hijab journey. So I want to start with you, May. I heard back then when you were sharing your story of your hijab journey that you started to wear hijab in 1998. And then there was this major event that changed a lot in so many people's lives, 9/11. And that changed your hijab journey. So tell us what your hijab journey has looked like and what that event meant for your connection with hijab.
Sure. So I put hijab on after getting married without pressure from my husband, but it felt right, and wore it proudly without any issues, never felt different walking around. But then on 9/11, I was very pregnant with my son. So his birthday is coming up, October 12th, inshallah. And being that pregnant with my first child, I was very, very nervous. So spoke with my dad, spoke with my husband, and they both agreed that it was safest just to take it off for things to calm down. Well, it took me 18 years to put it back on. And throughout those 18 years, there were moments where I thought about putting it back, but something inevitably would stop me. And then finally one day I was out with a friend of mine for coffee. I always kept prayer clothes with me, and she did too. And it so happened to be that day we were getting closer to us. I hadn't prayed Dhuhr and I didn't have my clothes with me. So I asked her, I said, do you have your prayer outfit with you? And she said, no. And at that point, I felt really frustrated. I was just like, I'm supposed to be dressed in a way that I am ready to pray anywhere at any time. I need to put hijab back on. So I talked to my husband about it, and I thought for sure he would be excited that it was time for me to put back on. This was in 2019, so during the Trump era, and he was not excited at all, actually, and shocked me by being very against it. So then it started like this 2-month period where we were going back and forth about my putting it on. I even emailed our local imam to ask if the political climate gave me an exception to having it on. And the imam very kindly wrote back telling me, yes, it's it is difficult at the moment, but there's no difference between us. They're minorities, so no, we don't exception. And then one day I just went ahead and started.
Mashallah. So 18 years. And I think that I think about your story more often than you probably think. That, when you hear that there was an 18-year gap between a woman, taking it off temporarily because 9/11 was kind of like a thing it was an emergency and you don't know how long it's going to last, that climate. But then 18 years it's a lifetime, right? And then for you to return back to it, I would love to dive deeper into that moment. But first we'll go into like a summary of the other guests' hijab journeys as well. So Nadia, tell us what your hijab journey has looked like so far.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for asking this question of me. So I was born and raised in Atlanta, as I said. My mother is Gambian. She was born and raised in Gambia, and we have a lot of Gambian family members in Atlanta. And so growing up with my family, we would gather for Eid and we would dress up, and definitely hijab was worn then and it was worn during prayer. But actually my family members, the women in my family are not hijabis. My mother doesn't wear hijab. I didn't grow up wearing hijab at all. There were aunts present in the community who wore hijab, but they were older. They'd gone to Mecca and decided to put it on, or they were just, I don't know, it kind of seemed like an old lady thing to me growing up. And that wasn't necessarily challenged, and I was never pressured to wear hijab. So I grew up not wearing it, didn't really think about it other than in the context of prayer. Went through college, started law school, started my adult life, not wearing hijab and not really thinking much of it until I would say the last couple of years. As I mentioned in my bio, I'm kind of on this journey to learn about Islam for myself. I went to Islamic school as I was younger, but there's just things that I feel like I never really took the time to understand. And now I want to do that on my own with classes and the support of imams and such. And so as I'm learning, I think I started to just have this interest by myself to wear hijab. And it's this interesting kind of, I wouldn't call it tension, but it's like I almost felt slightly alone because I'm the only woman in my family, young woman, let's say, in my close immediate family who would be wearing hijab. But alhamdulillah, like with classes like yours, Hakeemah, and friends that I've made in New York City who are hijabis, I've had a lot of support throughout. But it is relatively new for me, and I'm 33.
MashaAllah. So I think what's powerful about your story and why I asked you to come on was because I think there's this power of choice. And we use this slogan like hijab is a choice, right? And some people kind of dismiss that like, oh, it's just these women saying, oh, you could wear it or you could just not wear it and it's all good. But what I think that means is that there's an intentionality about choosing to wear this garment, right? And some people can be Muslim their whole life. It's not about becoming a Muslim and then like choosing to wear a hijab. You're Muslim your whole life. You're generations and generations of Muslims. You're from a Muslim country. And you have to make that intentional choice to put it on because you don't have that example. And I think that's really powerful. And I want to applaud you for going back and reintroducing yourself to Islam through your own perspective and educating yourself, because everyone needs it. Everyone needs that education. New Muslim, been Muslim your whole life. It's very imperative. So thank you for sharing your journey. And Jamila, let us know what your hijab journey has been like so far.
So I started wearing hijab when I was 5 years old. My parents had me go to a public school wearing it, and I just never thought anything of it. I just understood it was a part of my life. I did push back when I used to get like bullying and things like that, but my parents were like, nope, you don't have a choice, you have to wear it. And then when I reached puberty, they made me wear the jilbab, and I didn't have a choice, and I just wore it and I accepted it. That same year, I moved to Yemen, and in Yemen, it's just like a cultural thing. People wear niqab. And so after living there for about a month, my dad was like, well, you have to put the niqab on. And it was something like, for me, it was like a boundary I just felt was being crossed. And I told him, no, I'm not wearing the niqab. That's just one thing I can't do. Like, I did everything else, but I can't do the niqab. And it was very violent, the way he went about it, and abusive. And he basically told me, well, if you don't wear it, you're not going to school. And so I wore it because I was like, well, I can't stay home. I need to go to school. It's kind of like my safe haven, I guess you would say, because, I come from a very dysfunctional, abusive household. And so I wore the niqab just to like appease my father. I tried to love it. I tried to understand it, but it's just, I never saw it as something that was like obligatory. And so I just thought to myself, I'm like, the next chance I get to take it off, I'm going to take it off. But that fear that he instilled in me, it stayed with me for the next 14 years. I got married, I had children, and I was just so scared of him that I didn't take it off until, like I said, 14 years later. And when I finally did, he was so upset with me. And he kind of, I won't say he kicked me out of the family, but he kind of like gave me the cold shoulder and would tell everyone in the house, I want you to talk to your sister less. She's a deviant. She's like a bad role model and things like that. So I guess I would say like my hijab journey has just been one of like coercion and force. And now at this age, I'm trying to understand the hijab fully and embrace it for myself. And that's why I took your class, so that I could find where hijab is in my life and how I feel about it, and just like, I guess, helping with the styling so I feel better about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I am.
SubhanAllah. I want to thank you for sharing that, because I know that your story is one that has, I don't know if it's an overstatement, but trauma associated with, your hijab.
I would say there's trauma. There's a lot of trauma. Yeah.
Okay. And that's not easy to talk about, for some people, then, watching this show, they might be relating to that. There's so much that we wrap up in our hijabs. Like, it's never just a cloth. It's always a story. There's always layers to it. And what I get from your story is that, that familial tie is sometimes even more important than, the woman herself, or the girl herself. And there's ego involved, and there's so much involved on so many ends. And I wish that we could see hijab as a relationship between you and Allah, between the Muslim woman and her hijab and her relationship with Allah, because wearing hijab is an act of worship, and wearing it for the sake of any human being above wearing it, for the sake of Allah, is going to be too complicated. We have to try to strip away those layers of, am I doing this for my father? Am I doing this for my husband? Am I doing this for the workplace? Am I doing this for social media? Am I doing it, like, what am I doing this for? And when we strip away all those layers, I believe the root should be that we're doing this for the sake of Allah. And I think that you have that root. And that's why the hijab still is there, despite all of those other things. And so I want to thank you for sharing that journey with us. And we'll get into more about each one of these women's stories after the break. Welcome back to the show. And today I am joined by three incredible women, and we're sharing our hijab journeys. And I want to go back to May. May had an 18-year gap between wearing hijab, taking it off around 9/11, and then recommitting to hijab 18 years later after taking it off. And I want to go back to that moment when you recommitted to wearing hijab. What did that feel like? And especially because those closest to you, namely your husband, was not supportive of that in that moment. How did that feel to you, and what allowed you to get back to wearing hijab despite it all?
I mean, honestly, it was really empowering. Like I said, we had spent 2 months arguing. I would say 90% of it was over text message. And then finally there came a point where he texted and he was just like, I don't think we're going to agree on this. And I wrote back, no, I don't. So finally, one morning, it was a Saturday morning, I put on just like a little turban and a scarf around my neck. And I kind of nudged him awake. He was still asleep. And I said, I'm doing it. And I went out to the grocery store. So it was a very simple outing, very quick, but it felt amazing. And honestly, everything I've been scared of, or I had been scared of over those 18 years, you know, being ostracized or attacked or any of those things, or just fear for my safety or my kids, just fell away. Honestly, like all the benefits have far outweighed the negative. And it's just been amazing, like walking out, people recognizing me as Muslim, saying Salam alaikum. I mean, it's been really lovely. And it meant a lot knowing that I actually am grateful for having had those 2 months of arguing, because it showed that I was really committed and I wasn't doing it on a whim and it wasn't just impulsive. And it helped solidify my decision.
MashaAllah. I'm so proud of you. I know this is a long time ago, but I'm so proud of you. Like just have to say that again. And I remember when you first shared the story, I remember you describing that you were wearing a turban and the scarf around your neck.
Right.
And I thought about when people see women wearing hijab improperly, right? Where hair is still showing, neck is still showing, tight jeans, like whatever it is. And it is automatically, she doesn't wear it. She doesn't wear it well enough for it to be acceptable. She doesn't even wear it the way it's supposed to be. You know, it's always kind of shunned, and you never know what that woman has gone through. Right. Because someone might have seen you that day going to the grocery store and been like, oh, is that actually hijab? You know, like, what is that on her head? You know, like hijabis who know, like we kind of like see it and you kind of know that that's kind of like a woman wearing hijab, but not really wearing it the way that is acceptable. Right. And it's judged. And you came out of 18 years of not wearing it and fighting for your hijab with your, you know, the man you're in love with, the one man that is your person, you know, right. And you decided to do it. And that is commendable. So I just want to say I'm proud of you again. And just like a message to those watching, never judge the way that a woman is wearing her hijab. You never know what she's going through. So I want to go into Nadia's story now a little bit more, because I recently watched this TikTok video, and I think the creator of the video she said it so well. And I think TikTok creators have a way of just compacting a big message into like a couple minutes. And she was just talking about how we've created this dichotomy, whereas like it's either you're hijabi or you're not hijabi. And there's no room for like being on a journey, right? And we all talk about like the fact that we're on a journey. And that just means that there is a path that you're literally walking every single day of your life. And currently you don't wear hijab. And all the other women here, we all wear it. And I just want to know, like, do you feel that societal pressure? In that video, the creator was talking about how labeling a woman hijabi versus non-hijabi, acceptable versus non-acceptable, obedient versus rebellious, you know, is that like, do you feel that in your daily life? And, what's your take on that? And especially touch on culturally, whether that dichotomy of like hijabi versus non-hijabi, if that is meaningful for you, being a Gambian woman.
Yeah, sure. So I would say normally in my daily life, I do not feel that pressure. Obviously, I'm wearing hijab today, so I felt a little pressure today. It wasn't pressured, but I did think about whether or not it was appropriate for this moment, and I decided to do it. But I really, truly did not grow up with that pressure. I think it's because, like I said, my mom doesn't wear hijab, and she did not grow up with that pressure. She was sharing with me actually that as she goes back to Gambia and Senegal now, she's starting to see more women wear hijab sort of in this Arab, I don't know if it's Arab or acceptable, but in this way. And she's starting to see more niqabis. And growing up in Gambia, there were hardly any niqabis. And most women who covered sort of wore like the African turban style, maybe with another scarf on top. And so I think given how she grew up, that was kind of how I grew up. And because of that, I never had that pressure. I never felt like I wasn't Muslim because I didn't wear hijab. I think going in my travels to Gambia and Senegal, I see that women are deeply spiritual, deeply religious, and it doesn't necessarily matter if they're covering or not. That doesn't change how religious someone can be. So I've kind of operated with that mindset, which I love for me. It makes my life easier. But I think, so given that background, I've had to kind of reflect of, okay, well, Nadia, if no one's pressuring you, if you don't have this societal pressure, why is it that you want to wear hijab? And I think a part of it does have to do with being in America. I think if I was in Gambia, I honestly probably wouldn't need to. Like, Gambia is 90% Muslim. Women wear hijab there. They don't. It's kind of whatever. But in America, I feel like there's just, especially I live in New York City, and there's just so much going on in this city. And I think in the moments where I do wear hijab, I had a moment earlier this year in 2023, February, from like February to, I would say, May, I was wearing hijab almost every other day, kind of like either like this or in a turban style. I fell off in summer, but I think the reasons why I loved it in those days that I did it is because it reminded me that I'm a Muslim woman. And kind of walking in the store, as other sister mentioned, and having other people say salam to me was really nice. Being dressed in a way ready to pray was really nice. Kind of looking in the mirror and having this reminder of who I am and my purpose felt really grounding in the chaos of New York City. And I think like being a minority, being Muslim in this country, it felt really nice to have this hijab on in a way that I'm not sure would feel as nice or necessary if I was in a Muslim majority country. So
I think your perspective is really refreshing. And I can see that societal pressure is just simply not on you. And it feels like your hijab is almost like more exciting that way. And you can be more eager to wear it. And it can be just more purely, like I said, like between you and Allah, because you don't have people down your neck saying, wear it or don't wear it, or judging you based on it. It's just like, this is Nadia's journey. You're just simply choosing this act of worship. And I think that's the way it should be. And too often it becomes complicated by so many different things. So, and speaking of which, I want to touch back on Jamila's story, because this story, I think, it's more about how being hardlined as Muslims and almost forgetting that Allah's mercy overtakes his wrath. I think that's a hadith. Or that, that the family unit is so important. Just all of these things in Islam about mercy and forgiveness and being lenient and being even just caring, it kind of took a back seat to wear this thing or else, and punishment and abuse. And I'm really sorry for the things that you've gone through with relation to the hijab, but I'm sure that you can kind of tell us, like, how does that make you feel in a way? I don't mean to ask a kind of generic question, but what did it feel like to remove your niqab in the face of that fear and that kind of ostracizing that your father was was treating you with?
Yeah. So, like I said, I had so much fear to face him. Alhamdulillah, like my husband was very, very supportive of me, and I had him, to give me that strength that I needed. And I have a lot of siblings, and so I knew they were supporting me, but they were not supporting me openly because they were also very fearful of him. And so when I told my father, and he basically like branded me as there's a word in Arabic is called munharitha, so it's like a deviant, but also someone who misleads other people.
Wow.
I felt lonely. I felt isolated. I also felt very, very confused because I'm like, well, I'm the same person. I just took off my niqab. It's something that's not even an obligation, and I just felt like my siblings weren't speaking out for me because they were also fearful of my father. And so I really didn't know how to interact with my father. I take birrul walidain very seriously. So I just kept going back and just, dealing with the comments he made and, him telling like my sisters not to talk much with me, like I'm a bad role model and things like that. And this went on for years. So I removed my niqab 8 years ago, or maybe 9 years ago. I was in my mid-20s at that time. And soon after, my sisters all started taking off their niqab. And so my father blamed me. And then anytime anything came up in the family with my sisters, it would always go back to me taking off my niqab. It was like, you started like a snowball effect where people think they can have choices and things like that. And so to this day, my father actually, he doesn't speak to me now. And it's not because I took off my niqab, but I guess that set off a lot of other things coming to light and me speaking out about a lot of other things. And so it always goes back to like that pivotal moment where it was like, oh, she's speaking out. She's making choices. She's standing up for what she believes in. And now she's like poisoning everyone else in the family. So it was very lonely. It was very isolating. It was very confusing for me. I couldn't understand like how this one piece of cloth, taking it off would make my father like not love me, I guess, because I didn't feel loved, I'm a mom, I have children, and there's nothing they can do that would make me stop loving them. I feel like, or at least stop showing my love to them, And I was just very confused. It left me feeling very unsettled. And to this day, I still wonder, could I have done something differently? Did I make a mistake? But ultimately, like for me, it's like I did what I needed to do for my healing journey because, wearing niqab and taking off my niqab was part of a bigger picture, of just like kind of individuating myself from my family. So I'm still kind of going through the motions of that isolation and loneliness, but, it's much better now.
SubhanAllah. May Allah make it easier for you. And may you find the support that you need. And I'm so happy that you mentioned that your husband is very supportive of you and you found that support that you need as you still, again, try to figure out. I mean, this has been happening ever since 5 years old when you started to wear it. And then I can just imagine like wearing a jilbab, which is an even more, like how do you even move well as a child playing on a playground and things like that with the jilbab on all the time. Like there's so many layers to it. So we'll come back after a break and we'll talk more with all three of these ladies about their hijab journeys. Welcome back to This Hijabi Life. Today we're talking to three powerful women about their hijab journeys. And I want to go back to each one of you today, May, Jamila, and Nadia, And I want each of you to kind of tell us, what does the community have to do differently? What has to change about the way that we see hijabi women, or, you know, the hijab journey? What has to change about the community to make it easier or more understanding for women going through whatever they're going through with their hijab? So we'll start with May.
So I would say definitely a lot less judgment. Like you said, if someone had seen me when I initially put it back on, I would have gotten a lot of comments. And I remember I intentionally put it back on a day that we had a friend's reception for their wedding. So it was funny because, Nadia, I relate somewhat to your story too, because growing up, my mom, Allah yarhamha, didn't wear and nobody really in our Egyptian community did either. So at that reception, when I put it back on, half of the room was congratulating me and the other half was like, why did you put that on? It's not necessary. You don't have to wear it. Because there was a lot of, growing up, this kind of concept that the only people who wear hijab are poor or old. And since I was neither when I initially put it on, after I got married, there was a lot of pushback. Like I remember even at a party, like some of the women like trying to take it off of me when I initially had it on. And then putting it back, that same group just not being very supportive of my wearing it. And I think just in general, people need to support women, and particularly women need to support other women, and however they choose to express themselves. And just understand that we are all on our own journeys and paths. And, you know, if we're seeking knowledge on how to wear it better, then we can ask and be guided, but, or maybe gentle guidance if it's towards, you know, wearing it properly. But the judgment needs to end. And about our appearances in general, I feel like there's just too much pressure put on women on how to look.
I totally agree. And I think it's interesting that coming from Muslim country, Egypt, Gambia, or, you know, predominantly Muslim, there wasn't a predominant, you know, hijabi presence. I think that's interesting, an interesting dynamic. What do you think, Nadia, that needs to change about the perception of hijabi women or the community, societal pressure, etc.?
Yeah. I think she said it perfectly. The thing I was going to say was honestly support and lack of judgment, and letting a woman be free to decide if, how, when, and what it looks like. I've been very grateful, alhamdulillah, to have that space and freedom to be able to wear it, not wear it. I'm really grateful for like friends that I've had. I started talking about it more and more. And for a birthday, I had some girlfriends gift me a bunch of hijabs, which was really sweet. Even at work, like some days I'm wearing it, some days I'm not, some days it's a turban. Nobody says anything to me. And I'm so grateful that people just kind of let me be and are really supportive. And I've also had friends where I can talk about the fact that I'm struggling and there's no judgment. Like they might see me in a burkini one day and then see me, you know, wearing something else, not shorts or anything, but something else another day. And no one says, you know, where is your hijab or why you dress this way? And so I just think it's letting women kind of be free. To that end, of course, like girlfriends or family members who are there to keep you accountable is important as well. I definitely have a couple friends. I've been like, Nadia, where's your hijab been? I'm like, no, thank you for that.
Yeah.
But so I think the support and the nudge, but ultimately just judgment-free zone is so important.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I'm glad you mentioned the accountability, because I could see people kind of taking, you know, statements out of context and thinking, oh, hijab's a choice, let women be free. And yes, hijab is a choice, but it maybe not in the way that people are, you know, kind of contextualizing it. The accountability is really important, but what we're hoping for is not, you know, being judgmental, being overcritical, especially if you are not connected to that woman in any way. You are not her girlfriend, like you mentioned. You are just a person commenting online. Or you are just a person, who passed by her in a store or something like that. And immediately, like, you think you know her, you think you know why she does what she does, all of those things. So that accountability definitely is there because, again, hijab is an act of worship. So you kind of want someone to help you get closer to Allah. Like, that is what we're here for, is in order to worship Allah. But you don't necessarily need that from every person that sees you or encounters you. So I think that's really important. I'm glad you put some context to that. And before we go into Jameela, I wanted to mention that when women are hijabis or non-hijabi, if you're a Muslim woman and you're visible, most likely, you might have some kind of social media presence. And I think that's where I kind of see a lot of these dynamics happening. And that's why I mentioned comment sections, because, this video is going to be shared on, say, YouTube. And there's going to be people who don't know any of us here and don't know a lot of forward-facing public figures who are Muslim women, whether they wear hijab or don't wear hijab, or wear it in their way, right? Whether you find that acceptable or not. There's a lot of judgment and there's a lot of pressure, and that leads to so much, mental health issues and depression and anxiety. I mean, these are real issues. And again, I think if this was an act of worship that was not so visible, I mean, as soon as you see the woman, she's either covered or she's not. If it's any other higher form of worship, like, say, salah or fasting, like, these things are private. And so we don't get the chance to have a comment section about someone's hijab, someone's salah, or having, a public display of, like, how you fast and, like, do you follow all the things with fasting? Those are higher forms of worship, and we are not given that chance to be judgmental about it. That's everyone's personal, act of worship or journey. And I just wish hijab could be that way as well. Especially for those women who are bold enough or, just doing what they do online in a public way, social media, etc. So just wanted to put that out there as well. So Jameela, if you could tell us, what do you think the society needs to do differently in the way that we treat Muslim women who choose to be visible?
So I have to agree with everything that all of you said. I think the Muslim community, they have a very intense and unhealthy focus on, like, the female form, and specifically policing it. Mm-hmm. For some reason, because the hijab is so, apparent, it's like a free-for-all for everyone. They think they can comment. It's like a sense of collective ownership over women's bodies. I think families use hijab of their female relatives as an indicator of how religious their family is. I think that the community, they use the way a Muslim woman dresses as an indicator of her worth. And we really need to rethink all of these concepts, because fixating on, like, the outer image is, distracting us from looking at more deeper and meaningful indicators of piety, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that, people just need to recognize that just because hijab is a public act of worship, it doesn't mean they have, the right to comment and judge and have an opinion. Mm-hmm. One more thing I want to say is that, when a Muslimah takes off her hijab or her niqab, people, they tend to judge and see it as, like, a regression. Mm-hmm. And I put that in quotations, like, it's a regression, but it's not, because more than likely it was a very heavy decision for her, to make. And probably, she's working through a lot of trauma. She's probably healing. She's finding a way back to herself and finding her way back to Allah. And, you can love a person and dislike something they do, but your dislike for their actions, it can't, be more important than that person's personhood. And so I would say, like, just focus on loving your fellow sister and, advising gently and making dua that she has the strength to return, to that commitment of hijab. That's really something I wanted to emphasize.
Yeah, I love that you ended with making dua, because it all goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anyway. And all of our judgments and all of our opinions really do not matter at the end of the day. So if you really do care for that woman, and you care for, her well-being and her spirituality, then the best thing you can do is ask Allah to help her and to help you as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So we'll be back with final words from each of our guests as we wrap up the show. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to This Hijabi Life. Today we were talking about hijab journeys and the layers of being a visibly Muslim woman. And I want to thank all of our guests for sharing your hijab journeys with us. I wish we could go into much greater detail because there were so many points that you guys raised as you talked about your journeys, but we only have about an hour to talk about these things. And as we wrap up the show, I wanted each of you to tell us how you find the strength to continue to show up as hijabi, non-hijabi, whichever you are, or wherever you are along that path. How do you find the strength to continue to show up, even though this might be difficult, and continue to work on that relationship with Allah? And we'll start with May.
So honestly, the hijab portion has become the easiest part of it because alhamdulillah, like I've really fallen in love with it this time around. Back in 98, I was really frumpy. It was pre-Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and all those fun things, and your hijab styling class that made it easier to wear it in a stylish fashion. So this time around, it's actually just been a lot of fun. And as I put in my bio, I work at an Islamic school, and I love it. Like I love going in to work every day in outfits that feel stylish, because I want the girls who attend school there to know that it can be something that they can still express themselves with and be obedient to Allah and keep that relationship, strong. So alhamdulillah, like it's just been a really fun and wonderful journey now. And thanks for having me on to share it. And thanks for your styling class that helped me put it together easier.
Alhamdulillah for the styling class. But also I'm so glad that we brought it back to fashion some way, because this whole show is, about designers and, innovative hijab designs and things like that. But I also feel that when I started to see my hijab as fun because of the different styles of hijabs and, not just the hijab, but the outfit as well. That's when there was another layer of, the hijab where it started off with me as worship. Like, I'm wearing this because I'm Muslim. My dad said, this is how a Muslim, I'm like 9 years old or 10 years old, you just start wearing it. And for me, there wasn't a lot of pressure, but it only became fun and less mundane when I decided, okay, I think I can wear colors. I think I can wear like these new fabrics and these new collections. Like suddenly there was hijab collections and designers and all this stuff. So that became very fun for me. And I think that made me even closer to my hijab, where I feel like that bond with my hijab is, inshallah, may Allah help me, unbreakable. I hope so. So I'm glad you brought it back to fashion, because that's really important. Nadia, what do you think? What is your, how do you continue to show up and bring that strength to continue to work on that relationship with Allah through your hijab? You're on mute.
I think what gives me the strength, honestly, is just the understanding the mercy and love of Allah. I feel very grateful for every day that I have on this earth, every day that I get to make choices that are better, that I get to repent, that I get to do better. And so I think that gives me strength, that gives me excitement. The fact that I feel like there's so much for me to learn, that also gives me a lot of strength and excitement. I'm ready for my hijab journey to really take off. I'm looking forward to, I have so many hijabs that friends gifted me that I haven't worn yet. I'm looking forward to styling. I'm just looking forward to a lot of things. And so I think there's just this excitement and this undercurrent, because it's like, it's not something that's just only vanity or that's vain. It really has a deeper purpose and a deeper meaning behind it. And so I love that this hijab journey and my growth and even regression in it only in each step, in each day, is bringing me closer to Allah. So I just feel really grateful.
Oh, I love that response. And I pray that you continue to enjoy that, reconnection with your hijab and that reconnecting with Allah. And I pray that Allah just makes that so, comfortable for you, and you explore all of those new hijabs that you have in your collection.
Ameen, thank you.
Jameela, what do you think? How do you continue to show up and bring that strength to continue to work on your relationship with Allah through your hijab?
Yeah, so like me, I've been wearing it for so long that it's not a difficult thing for me. Like, it's just like second nature to me. It's more about reminding myself that I'm wearing it for Allah and not just because of my father, because of, my children or my husband or whatever it may be. And so just like constantly renewing my intention and remembering that Allah has blessed me in so many ways, and I never want to be heedless of that. And also, it's been very helpful for me to finally I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I always wore like all black, kind of like an abaya style and niqab and everything. And so just being able to find my style and experiment with hijab, it also has been helpful, in becoming excited about it and, just continuing to do it happily, and it brings me closer to Allah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank all of you. Jameela, thank you for sharing that. May, thank you for sharing your journey with us, and Nadia as well. I want to thank each one of you guys for being here and being vulnerable with us, because I know sometimes it's not easy. And I just want to let you know that people watching this will definitely take inspiration from each one of you. So it's when you become vulnerable and you're able to share that, you can inspire young people to follow in your footsteps, because I think each one of you is worthy of being followed as a role model. So thank you so much for being here. And as we wrap up the show, I want to share my final thoughts as well. Recently, I don't know why TikTok has become my favorite app, but people love to share, just their thoughts, their takes on things. And it had me thinking about what is a safe space. For some people, just opening up their phone and sharing their thoughts is their safe space to just let things out, to just be themselves. And I think that app is a place where people can really just be themselves. And I learn a lot there. And that concept of safe spaces, it needs to be replicated, especially for women, and especially for women who have all of these intersectionalities, Muslim women, hijabi women, African women. It becomes a lot for people to bear. And when people are sharing about, the things that they go through with their hijab, it's not to be dismissed. It's not to be degraded or diminished. It's to create a safe space around that woman sharing, and then thinking about how we can best support those women who might be going through whatever they're going through with their hijab. And again, just a reminder that safety is something that we find in our relationship with Allah. When you put our head down in sujood and tahajjud, or, that last sujood of your salah where you're trying to get the most khushu', there's nobody else involved in that moment but you and Allah. And that's really the safest space. And I pray that when we're dealing with women, we deal with women in the way that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ advised us to deal with women, which should be in the best way possible. The best of you are those who are the best to their women. And that's a quote from the Prophet ﷺ. So let's try to replicate that. Women towards women, and also, you know, men towards women as well. Let's try to be the best that we can, especially to our brave hijabi and non-hijabi, anywhere on the journey women in Islam. So tune in next week to This Hijabi Life, where we'll be sharing more powerful stories of hijab fashion, entrepreneurship, or just regular stories of women who are wearing hijab in this life. Till next week, stay blessed and covered beautifully.